What's happening, guys? My name is Juntlawani. Welcome back to my channel. Here we talk politics, South African politics. I just give my commentary. And this week I want to focus on this story. Khuselo Diko, who chairs the Parliamentary Committee on Communication, she's saying that government needs to urgently start regulating podcasts. She is worried that these platforms are huge, almost to the size of what some of the radio channels have access to, and that government needs to start regulating these platforms as soon as possible. Now, Khuselo Diko, in her spare time, she runs a Twitter account. It's called Khuselo Diko. She has about 130,000 followers on that page. And if you follow that account or have seen any content from that account, there's one conclusion. Khuselo Diko loves the ANC. She lives and breathes the ANC, almost to a point of worshipping the ANC. If you were to have a political organization tomorrow, you would want a member like Khuselo Diko in your party because she just is all about it. She's all about the ANC, loves everything about the ANC, which again leads me to think that now her saying that she wants government to regulate podcasts, obviously, as you know, someone who loves the ANC so much, and if you understand or know any podcasts in South Africa that mainly speak on politics, you don't have to go through many. Take Citizen Concerned, take The State of the Nation, which is hosted by MacG. The theme in both those podcasts is very simple: anti-ANC, and whatever they're doing. So Khuselo Diko could be sitting in her little whatever she sits at or whatever, and looking at this and thinking to herself, we need to do something about it. And obviously using her power as the committee chairperson, whatever that is, in the parliamentary what, she's then obviously turning to that to say, how do I use my power to actually control the fact that MacG, Katlego Moagi, do not love my beloved ANC? Also on this issue, Khuselo Diko, there's a Times Live article where I want to just extract a quotation here. So the article says that Khuselo Diko is saying that the issue is pressing. As more people turn to podcasts as sources of news, it is worrying because when you look at the numbers, these podcasters are growing at an exponential rate, she said. First of all, that's completely untrue that people turn to podcasts as a source of news. That is completely untrue. Podcasts, in my opinion, are commentary. It's opinion. It's subjective. Where you have the news providing the actual story, the 5 Ws, what happened, who was involved, when did it happen, what, all of that. That's what the role of the news media does. Podcasting is basically the next layer in that, whereby we comment on this. There's commentary on this. Perfect example is what happens in soccer. The match itself between the two teams, we just came out of a derby match between Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates. After the match is done, you have the commentators who sit around the table and discuss what could have went wrong and whatever. That is commentary. That is the role of podcasters. People know this. People do not turn to podcast for news, because news and the role of what news media is basically entitled or expected to deliver is far different responsibility, entirely different to podcasts. Like I said, podcasts are opinion, it's subjective, it's commentary on the news that is delivered by the news media. So I just want to speak a bit on where I think the threat might occur, or where I think there might be a threat with this rise of podcasts, like what Khuselo Diko is speaking about, that these podcasts are growing at an exponential rate. And I'm not sure if Khuselo Diko and her buddies are looking at this from the perspective of what could be the threat. I could be wrong. But I think the threat is the fact that government not having control on ideas, government not having control on influence, and who is the influential person can become a threat. And maybe they know this, maybe that's a fact, because I'm going to say this, that currently in South Africa, of course, we've got the mainstream media pretty well established, whether it's commercial stations, whether it's people that are involved in like SABC News and all of that, pretty well established entity. The mainstream media is a beast, right? It's everywhere. And the mainstream media has a job. They are journalists. They need to provide news to us. And To some extent, the news is good. Some of the reporting is excellent. If you read some of the articles, the use of word, use of language, the jargon, all of it can be very, very good. Sometimes you listen to broadcasters when you're driving and you tune into radio and you listen to the way that they articulate. Some of them are just such beautiful orators. They speak so well and they've got all of these things, and it's just so entertaining at times. Even if you listen to like talk radio, you do get people that are just really, really, really good broadcasters, right? So you have that on lock. Now, mainstream media, the way I look at it, is almost like given 90% of a window to report on the news as you see it, right? Report on the 5 W's, who did what, where, why, when, whatever. They do that. And then there's this other 10%. This is totally my own personal opinion of the situation. The other 10% where, from what I pick up in sort of like the theme with our mainstream media, and that is your job is to make sure that in the mind of the South African, race is always there. It's almost like the responsibility of the mainstream media is that South Africans need to worry about all these other problems that they have, and they also need to worry about race. That's my opinion. I feel like it's something that is done intentionally so to keep this idea, to keep the message of race top of mind. I want to also speak on the fact that this entire Khuselo Diko campaign, where she's been all over the news, blah, 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 apparently it is said to have been sparked by comments that MacG made, and MacG's platform is huge, right? He made some comments, and obviously that started trending because it's also so big. And even though MacG is not necessarily a political person, he's more like music, girls, and all the other stuff. Even though he's not political, right? I think if you've listened to his show or if you've picked up any of his message, right, when he does get serious and talks about real issues, for example, leading up to the elections, he did a couple of episodes that were political. Khuselo Diko knows this, knows the power of podcast and show, and they also, ANC knows this very well, that MacG does not speak well of the ANC. And many times he's done this, and at times he's even said, this might get me into trouble, but he does not speak well of the ANC. Another threat, right, that you've got someone as big as him, the biggest podcast in Africa, and he is not singing your tune, right? Because we know Khuselo Diko adores the African National Congress. And there's another big sin, grave sin that MacG commits time and time again. I don't know if you guys pick it up, but I pick it up. I've listened to some of his stuff. Maybe not so much now. I used to be a big fan in the beginning, but whenever I listen to MacG, because he's starting to like travel a lot, he's been going to places, playing music, DJing here and there. A grave sin that he commits time and time again. MacG praises Cape Town. And if you listen to mainstream media, you would, if you've picked it up, mainstream media does not come out and say, look at Cape Town. Cape Town is a model. I've never picked it up. I could be completely wrong, but I've never picked it up. Even if maybe they speak about something positive that's happening in the Western Cape or in the city of Cape Town, they'll say, yeah, or maybe they say they're interviewing the mayor. They'll say, Mayor, I get she's doing this and this and this and this. And they'll say, but Mayor, what about this community? What about these people? Because maybe the idea is that, okay, cool, look at Cape Town. You must, of course, appreciate the cute sides and the nice sides or whatever. But Cape Town is unfair. They're not fair to anyone. They're not fair to everyone that lives in Cape Town. Some people are not. And I asked myself this question that, it's so boring, because name a part in an area in South Africa that is able to cater. Okay, let's say Cape Town's mistake is that they don't cater to informal areas like they do to formal areas. You have areas in Gauteng, in Johannesburg, formal or not, there's absolutely nothing. Roads are bad, water problems, electricity problems. In fact, in those areas, if it was not for private players always coming in to save the day, always coming in, and in some cases community members who rally behind to still keep the areas clean, to still fix there's a lot of people that are getting involved to keep things going in Joburg, that sometimes you come in, you think, oh yeah, that does not look too bad. Who said this place is not well run? Because it's not government that's making it happen, and that's a fact. So even if you take the idea of mainstream media about Cape Town, where you're like, no, don't look at Cape Town. Cape Town is not an example because they don't look after informal communities. There's parts in South Africa where even informal communities, it's still bad. because it's almost like they're downplaying whatever achievements the City of Cape Town has done to say, oh, if you're doing it in formal communities, it doesn't matter, meaning you're not really working. But I beg to differ. I beg to differ. I'm going to conclude by saying that if maybe indeed there is a need to be concerned from this parliamentary committee communication thing, whatever it's called, Khuselo Diko and her friends, if there's any need for concern, I would maybe ask the question that what are the conversations with this committee and the platforms that are available in South Africa. I know the likes of YouTube and Spotify, they're global platforms, they're available across the world, but we do know that there's North Korea, whatever that, if maybe we should be using North Korea as an example. There are countries that completely ban these platforms. There are countries that restrict certain things from being showed on these platforms. There are platforms that enforce that YouTube and all of that still abide to their local regulations and their local laws. If there's any need for concern, I'm not saying there is. I completely don't support this thing. I think Khuselo must get a hobby instead. But if there's a need and she really has time to do something, then maybe go directly to the platforms. Because you cannot allow YouTube to be available to South Africans for not only for consumption, but for people to actively use the platform and then turn around and dictate how I should use the platform. Like, there's already some area issues in terms of blocking creativity and the freedom of expression and all these other things. Like, you're overstepping. It's already an overstep. So if there's anything that has to be said, Khuselo Diko maybe meet with YouTube, maybe meet with Spotify, maybe meet with those platforms and really talk to people who understand this better than trying to bully podcasts into doing what you want them to do. Saying you don't want to create a nanny state, that's exactly what you're doing, because now you're trading in those lines of North Korea, if you know what I mean. That's all I have for this video. Before you go, please hit the subscribe button. Also like this video. If you have any thoughts, where do you stand? Apparently, following this whole negotiation and all of these talks, there is going to be a framework in order to regulate podcasts that is going to be put out. And once the framework has been drafted, they're going to open for public opinion. This committee is going to open for public opinion. Where do you stand in this debate? Are you pro-regulation? Are you pro some regulation? Are you completely anti-regulation? Do you think podcasts, especially podcasts like the likes of MacG, Citizen Concern, do you think these podcasts act in the same way as radio stations and news? Do you think it's the same thing? Let me know all of those thoughts in the comment section. I really, really love looking at your comments. Let me know your thoughts, and it's okay to disagree, but let's do so in a respectful way. I look forward to seeing you again when I drop the next video.